palpitations in my chest and I couldn't catch my breath. And then that very rapidly, I was unable to breathe at all. And so that was literally, I passed out in the hallway going from my room to the OR on the labor and delivery floor. And during that, I felt this, I was literally trying to suck air through, it was like trying to suck air through a teeny tiny little straw. I just could not get any air in, and everything started to go dark. And as that happened, I felt this peace just come over me. It sort of like came from behind me and above me. It started to come down, and I just went out. I was completely peaceful. I was not afraid. I was so hyper focused. I was like, I need to breathe for my baby. I need to breathe for her. But there was no fear there or, you know, terror or any of the things that some people imagine would be present.
Were you still in your body at that second, the very first second? It was just this inside you, still in your body before you. Okay.
Yes. And so like, basically for me, everything went dark. And then my next moment of awareness was of being able to look down and see a body down there and people around it. And I watched as these little black particles, like little black dots, came racing up to where my vision was. And they came up mainly from like my middle area, like my chest area, my stomach area, and some from my head. And they came racing up to where my vision was. And then I was sort of there like a staticky kind of cloud, just kind of undulating. And I couldn't hear, I didn't have any sense of being human, of what these things were down below me. I didn't have a name for them. It was as if I didn't have any earthly existence. I hadn't been on earth at all. So in my understanding, I was my pure consciousness. And I was curious though. I could feel what we would call emotions. And I was curious about what was going on. And I kind of looked around and I saw that the wall was sort of like fluidy tan, and there was a wallpaper border that was up along the top. And I looked down and I saw my doctor deliver my daughter by C-section, hand her to somebody. And this person turned around with her and I couldn't see. And I was like, it was like watching a movie. And I'm like, what's that? I was curious.
You didn't know that was your daughter? It was just a scene.
It was just something I was observing. I was very much a detached observer of it all. Okay. And I sort of floated around to my right, and I was becoming more curious and more like, I really want to know what this is. And I felt something tug to my left, and I sort of resisted, like, I want to stay, I want to know more. And it pulled harder. And I just knew, okay, it wants me, I'm going to go. So I like acquiesced. I just said, okay. And I was taken out of there. I started moving super fast through the wall and into this bright white flash of space, and then into the same particles I was like reabsorbed in it, but there were much more, and it was much denser than I was. So I was sort of reabsorbed into this particulate matter, and I was racing along at the same time. And I looked to my left and I could see the particles there. And then it would be like a little bit liquidy, like gray, white, black in one spot. And then it would become the dense particles again. And then I stopped. We're in this space and I had this download, and it was like a funnel, and it was all the answers to the questions I'd ever had. And it sort of like went doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, and the answer was love for all of my questions. And when that point came into my awareness, I felt it. I just was like permeated with this blissful love. And I was like, oh, this is amazing, you know.
So you went like from no knowledge of anything to
all knowledge.
Knowledge.
It was like all knowledge. And I looked over to my right, and in the distance there was a little white speck, and I wanted to go to it, and it wanted me to come to it at the same time. So I started moving towards it. And as I moved towards it, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then the opening, there was these shadow beings, and they were sort of humanoid. And in the front was a kind of a small one. And I could tell he had sort of like a round, wide brim hat and overalls. And he was like a little boy, and he needed my help. And I felt I wanted to help him. So I went into that space, and the shadow being sort of fanned out to my left, and I was inside the space, and I kind of looked around for the little boy. He wasn't there. And the whole time, this part is very calm, peaceful, neutral feeling. And then I felt that all of these beings needed my help. And I felt back, yes, I want to help you.
How clear did you see them?
Oh,
Were they
more clear.
shapes?
Yeah, they were like humanoid, meaning they had the sort of the blockish, grayish appearance of a human being with arms, a torso, sort of a head and legs.
Could you see details of face, hair? It was more than an outline. It was a shape of a figure, or
it was a shape of like a human being.
Okay.
Like the most closely resembles what we are shaped like.
Okay.
Generally speaking. And they were distinct beings. Like they weren't all the same being. And they started to take my energy. Once I agreed, yes, I want to help you. And everything's through feeling. There's no thinking. There's no mind. It's not telepathic.
Not even I know what you mean.
No.
Because I experienced both. I experienced telepathic, and then I experienced just okay. Like a just knowing.
Yes. Mine was completely, and there's a word for it, and I can't think of what it is, but it was completely through feeling. And they started to come at me, and they were taking my energy, because I was just pure like energy. I was consciousness.
Taking your energy.
They were taking it as they would dart at me and move away, dart at me and move away. And I felt myself depleting there, like becoming less of who I was. And I felt no.
Because when you got this knowledge, then you knew who you were and everything.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I wouldn't say that I could sit down and write down everything that I learned into words. Yes. It wasn't like that.
But at least you knew who you were. I mean, now, like, and you had just had a child and this kind of.
No, I didn't.
No, still not.
I had no understanding of this place that we call Earth, or anything that inhabits it.
Still no. Even in that knowing, that didn't come. That was still okay.
No.
But they're taking who you are.
They were like taking. The way I describe it is they were taking my particles. They were taking bits of me, my essence, away. And I felt, no, I'd like to leave. And so I was pulled out of there. I then went back into the denser particulate matter and was moving along. And then much more quickly, I came through another opening, and it was less distinct, and it was the same particulate matter I was, but I could tell it was sort of like had a round edge or something to it. And I moved through that, and I emerged into this most beautiful landscape. It was like, I call it my Eden, because I was raised Catholic, and the description of Eden and the images of Eden that artists have rendered that I've seen, this was like this gorgeous, beautiful, divine place.
Did you have knowledge like this is heaven, or did you have any place of reference for that even? Just
no. Okay. No, what I did was I moved into this, and everything's happening super, like there's no time. Like I couldn't say, oh, that took 5 minutes,
right,
to happen. Right. But this, I merged out, and then I merged with everything. I was these yellow flowers that were spread out in front of me. I was the rocky, mossy waterfall that was to my left, and the evergreen forest to my right, and the rolling green hills and trees and blue sky. out in the distance. I was one with all of it, and it was one with me, and it was like we merged, and it was complete bliss. And then I was flanked on both sides by, I call them my spirit guides, and we might call them angels here. They loved me, supported me unconditionally. They were there to do just that. I could feel them. They were like solid as any person in your life that's ever been, that has supported you 100%. And that's how these beings felt. And they felt very, they just felt lovingly supportive of me. And
did you see them, or is the feeling knowing they're that you saw?
I saw them. Yeah, they were very tall and beige in color, and they were sort of drapey, but not distinctly wearing garments. And they were faceless. I couldn't see a face.
Okay.
How
many do you think there were?
There were two, one on either side. Yeah, one on either side. I was sort of in the middle.
Okay.
And they communicated through feeling. You could stay here, you could go to what comes next, or you could go back. And I didn't know what came next. I didn't have a sense of that. I didn't have any memory of where I had come from. I could have stayed there eternally and been completely happy. You know, I'm trying to use human words, but they fall short. I could have existed in that space eternally and been blissed out, you know, and happy. But I chose to come back. And I started right as soon as I felt that I'd like to go back. I started moving backwards, and they turned, and through the opening, they turned and they communicated, if you go back, you need to share what you learned here. And I communicated back, okay. And then the next thing I know, I was feeling something, a terrible pain in my chest. And then I remember waking up in the ICU, and I had unhooked myself from everything and climbed out of bed and tried to leave.